Oh, I'm the last one here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, Brian, how you doing? I can hear you. Yeah,
Oh, good.
good. I thought I was gonna be the first one here,
Well, Rachel said to be on time, so
and I actually think she might even be here too. Let's see here.
it's all good.
Yeah, she's here, but she's not in the room.
I've had more than one Strata meeting where you're like, oh, I'll just sign on, and then there's some glitch, and then you're like, oh, now I'm almost 2 minutes late or whatever. So,
Well, and with the webinar format, I think like I haven't done one for I don't know, probably 6 months.
okay,
So as a panelist, you're only going to see us, right? We're not going to see them.
gotcha.
So and then I'll record it, but I'll start the recording when we actually start.
Okay.
And then I don't know where Rachel is though. She should be in here. I don't know why I can't see her.
I spoke with her about 9:30.
Oh no, I went through the questions with her this morning and we got kind of
Good.
ready. But
Yeah.
uh
No, I think it'd be good if this goes well. Hopefully it does. We can do more, you know, topic specific sessions on, concrete buildings and then wood frame buildings and those kind of things. If there's interest, like if you poll your managers after, and if people want more information, say on parking garage renewals, we could do a lunch and learn on specifically that. And
yeah.
maybe even bring in at some point, one of the technical reps from Tremco.
Here. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. This will be recorded as well, so we can get you a copy later on. We have with us today Bryan from BC Building Science. How you doing, Bryan?
Morning, everybody.
There's Bryan. And we have Rachel from Service Painting and Coatings.
Morning, everybody.
Should I
I'm
ask you how you
doing,
doing, Rachel?
I'm doing well, thanks. How
Okay,
are you?
well, I asked it. Okay. So the Starbucks cards that we're going to thank you for joining us today will be emailed out later on today. You'll get those, so keep an eye on your email. And first of all, let's introduce Bryan. So Bryan's with BC Building Sciences. Has extensive experience with Strata renewal projects on both sides. Bryan, correct me if I'm wrong, anything here, as a consultant and contractor. And because we're short on time, I'll ask you in 20 seconds, did I get that right?
Pretty much. Not 9 years with BC Building Science, with existing buildings team. I do work on our new construction side a bit, mostly in the wood frame realm, and I'm also a registered roofing observer with IBEC and a roof observer for RCABC for roofing renewals. But yeah, 9 years with BCBS and about 25 years in the construction industry.
Perfect. And then Rachel is a level 3 rope pass technician, and she's been on the front line of a lot of these projects doing the work. Um, so I'm going to get over to the next question I'm asking this. So Rachel, tell us about service painting and coatings.
So, Service Painting and Coatings is a licensed business. Previously doing business, we were spec painting, and now we're doing business as Service Painting and Coatings. The qualifications, we basically I've been in this industry, since I was a young kid, basically, and I've been painting and doing all of the, hands-on kind of work, and that's transformed into me working, as for many of you, a service rep for service group, and so over the past few years, I've been helping and developing service and painting and coatings.
Okay, perfect. And then let's speak to qualifications and a bit of a track record here, and then we'll get into some more questions. So what are the primary areas of service painting and coatings can help? We'll say residential buildings being strata and rental. That's mainly who we have on the line today.
So our
So
primary focus is like building renewal, and all of our past experience speaks to, protecting and extending the serviceable life of, any kind of like painting system or waterproofing system that goes to, like full facade paints to, high performance coatings in high exposure areas, traffic coatings, parquet, high turn points. We've done pretty much everything in the industry. So we're well versed in this field, and basically our focus is building renewal.
okay, give me one project that you've done for Strata in the last year that you can speak to quickly, so they get an idea of the real world here.
So Quattro 2, they had an engineering firm involved. They gave us a specified scope of work. we're basically re-ing the existing decks. They have wood substrate decks that have a traffic coding system on them currently, and we are renewing that for them. So there's, yeah, basically, building envelope renewal, deck systems, hardy, stucco, any kind of cladding. We can basically do all of that.
Okay, perfect. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, and I'll monitor the questions, and she's going to ask Bryan a bunch of questions. And we have be aware of people's time here, so we got about 15 minutes left. So again, if there's things we want to get into later on, no problem, we'll get into it. So Rachel, Bryan,
All right.
your
So
turn.
Bryan, kind of with the bigger picture from like a building science perspective, what are the biggest risks of delaying projects and kind of allowing things to go too long?
Yeah, I'd just say just high level, particularly for new construction, a new building comes online, whether it's a rental building or a strata building, and we have a 2, 5, and 10 warranty. So typically the warranty covers 5 years for water penetration. So what often happens is the developer or the builder will build to that 5 year standard, and then really from the years 5 to 10. Depending
Hmm.
on how well it was done the first time, you're really relying on those coatings and paint the original painting to measure up. If you don't review the condition of the paint or your coatings, whether it's your traffic membrane or your coatings on the wall, for a wood frame building, when that painting fails, you're looking at decayed siding, decayed trims, decayed fascia boards. If it's an exposed, concrete tower where the paint fails, you could potentially have water migrating into cracks in the concrete. um, Freeze thaw
Yeah.
cycles, the concrete breaks off. Now you're not just looking at a cosmetic painting issue. You're looking at structural repairs, which are getting expensive. So in terms of ensuring that the building's done effectively, I would suggest that Strata's incorporate into their monthly fees that painting cycle,
Hmm.
on top of just their maintenance fees.
So ultimately budgeting towards this rather than waiting for something to happen. Like, the
Yeah,
typical calls that we get are, oh my God, we've got a leak in our building. It's, XYZ, the storage room below this
yeah.
is going, or whatever it might be, or this, like railing or the fascia is, degraded so much to the point where you have to like remove the railing and
Yeah, it's
redo.
preventative maintenance. I think
Yeah.
a lot of stratas, and I know there's pressure on to keep fees low, so they incorporate their monthly fees into, vacuuming the hallway and cutting the grass and maybe cleaning the dryer vents every year and some basic maintenance. But what they don't incorporate is enough cost in their monthly fees to recoat the traffic coating every 5 to 8 years, to repaint the building every 8 to 10 years. And then what happens? A depreciation report comes down and they identify that the building needs to be repainted. The strata hasn't budgeted for it, and now they're looking at, having an SGM and an assessment to get the building
Hmm.
painted. It's harder to do that as opposed to just saving some of that money, knowing you're going to need to recoat and repaint your building at regular intervals. Um, at least you have most of the money set aside, and then you mean a small assessment versus, oh, we need, $8,000 from each owner to repaint the building. And if you've left it long, now you have some structural repairs to do on top of that. It's not just painting and sealants, it's replacing some decayed plywood, it's the trims are rotten, those kind of things. So really recommend that Stratas incorporate painting and coatings and keeping their surfaces intact as part of the regular maintenance.
For sure. So I think that kind of goes to my next question. If the strata can't do everything at once, what coating or waterproofing work should be treated as highest priority? Like, what do you recommend strata do as a plan?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
so if you identify your building, it's, the highly exposed walls, if we're talking about cladding. So sometimes
Hmm.
like the gable ends of a townhouse project, for instance, might be more exposed to rain than other sheltered areas of the back of the balcony, say where a sliding door is. Those areas never see any water or exposure to weather. So those are going to be lower priority than something that's higher exposed. In
Hmm.
terms of traffic membranes for the parking garage, we see the highest levels of wear at, the garbage and recycling bin areas or visitor parking where there's a lot of people turning, coming in and out. Maybe If it's a
Hmm.
garbage area, there are heavier trucks going over, turning tires on the traffic surfaces. So those areas tend to fail earlier than, down at the bottom of the parking garage in a big building where only a few cars could come and go. That may be lower priority. Higher priority
Yeah.
is higher traffic areas. And um, so those areas would need to be, maintained maybe a bit more often than some of the other areas. If the strata can't afford to do everything, I would suggest, focusing on the higher use, higher exposed areas first. Uh,
Hmm.
when we're talking about painted elements, oftentimes like the wood trims around the windows would need to be repainted first. Whereas, if you have a townhouse building that has, say, vinyl siding, you don't
Hmm.
really need to do much with the vinyl siding except clean it, but the wood trims need attention. And I see a lot of buildings around town where they just assume that it's all the same thing and the trims don't get painted. If you're waiting 10 or 15 years to paint your trims, you're probably replacing some of them because they've been exposed to rain.
Yeah, and it gets quite expensive rather than just like, your regular maintenance of repainting. So
Right.
yeah. So, in terms of like substrates, like obviously we've, kind of discussed vinyl and the need to, just have kind of regular maintenance and that kind of thing. But when it comes to like stucco and hardy and, like the harder substrates, I think there's like a bit of a mind to people that they can just let those things go a little bit longer. But I'd like you to speak
Well,
on
the
that a little
stucco,
bit.
most of the stucco we have around town, even if it's a newer building and it's a rain
Yeah.
screen stucco, stucco is a cementitious top product below. The base coat is cement. It's a cement
Hmm.
based. So you're gonna get some cracking naturally in the stucco. No matter how many control joints are put in, it's cement. It's gonna crack. You're gonna get micro cracks potentially. And then same thing with concrete. If you get water into those cracks, you get freeze thaw cycle. The stucco can, you get spalling and the cracks become bigger.
Hmm.
The top coat on a stucco is generally an acrylic painted finish. So once that paint fails, if it's put on thinly to begin with, you're getting water into the stucco systems, and those cracks become bigger. And the one thing about stucco that people often don't realize is that because it's sort of a more of a porous surface, sap from trees that, and drift into the building from the wind, dirt gets stuck to the building, it gets dirty, and then it's actually trapping more water against the wall. So I would suggest, with stucco is you want to clean regularly and repaint. For fiber cement panels, people think, hardy panel, oh, it's hard, it's cementitious. Well, it's called fiber cement. There is still wood elements mixed in to that product.
Hmm.
Typically, where you see areas if those panels are too close to horizontal surfaces or roof lines, you get water wicking up into the panel, gets kind of soft at the bottom, and so these elements still need to be maintained, cleaned, and painted regularly. I would suggest often new buildings. Um, the paint finish is typically not great. So you're looking at, repainting a hardy panel probably in 8 to 10 years.
Okay. So that's really good information. I think, when it
You
really
got
comes down to it.
time, 8 minutes left. Time alert. 8 minutes.
Okay.
Just a little out there, but it's good. You
Okay.
guys are doing
So
great. Okay.
yeah, no, I think we've already like, gone over some of the touch points here, but when a strata is comparing like painting or traffic coating quotes, what should they look for in a scope or a spec? And how should they protect themselves in this process?
Well, working for an engineering firm, we'd recommend that a strata work with a consultant. There's often owners that don't see the value in doing that, or we can just call a company and get a quote. So if stratas are going to do that, I would encourage them to involve a technical rep from one of the coating companies, whether that's Tremco or Sika. They have
Hmm.
staff members that are well versed. They can come out to your building, even if you don't want to use an engineer. Have the technical rep come out and be like, okay, we have this product, da da da, 1, 2, 3, and then use their spec and get, 3 or 4 quotes using the same spec so that everybody that's quoting on your project is quoting on the same scope of work.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, Strata just call for 3 quotes. One's 100 grand, one's 50 grand. They're not even quoting the same product or the same preparation of the product. And then you're like, well, do we just go with a low number, or like, is this person not incorporating the right amount of work? I will say for
Mhm.
a coating project in particular, the preparation of the substrate is critical to the success of any coating product. So if you're adding a top coat to a balcony, it needs to be cleaned. Are they doing a xylene wipe and making sure that the top coat is properly adhered? If you're doing a parking garage, is the old coating removed? Is the concrete prepped and all the dust and debris removed properly before you're putting your top coats down? Um, Look at the weather outside today. We have humidity and things to consider. So surface preparation when you're putting a paint or a coating on a surface is critical path. That's something to look for. If someone says they can just come and recoat your thing and your surface, and they're not telling you what they're going to do to prep the surface properly, I would say that's a bit of a red flag to a strata that someone's just basically coating over the old stuff, and it's not going to last. For the duration of time that the manufacturer is claiming it will. Most traffic coatings, if they're properly applied, would last, for sure 5 to 8 years on a parking garage, maybe 10 years in the less used areas. In the higher traffic areas, even around garbage bins, if you get 8 years out of it, you're doing very well. I don't really care what the technical rep will say to you in that. It's a high traffic area, but service preparation is critical.
Yeah.
So I'd like to
Okay.
touch on that for a second. I think it's one thing is really cool you said there is that so when you're creating the plan, you're creating the specifications, we're talking about having consultants, engineers, but you also talked about having the manufacturer's rep for the product.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's an area a lot of
Yeah,
people won't look at, which I think is I just wanted to touch on that again. I think that's really
yeah.
that's interesting. That's probably a way of yeah. Okay.
I mean,
So
I know manufacturers ultimately want to, sell their product and sell more of their product, but
Yeah.
I often see, there's certain products that, that they can say, well, we recommend a primer's used, but it's not required unless temperatures are this or unless this condition is that. And so sometimes when a property manager is getting a quote, the other person might not quote on that primer because that was sort of an option from the manufacturer. Having a manufacturer, the technical rep out from Tremco or Sika, come to your building, look at the site conditions, look at the spec. Like, are we specing the right products? Even if sometimes you're working with an engineer, it's good to, I mean, we involve the technical rep all the time. Have them come out, give their opinion on whether we're specing. Oh, we have a 351, but the 355 is better because of this application, because of this. It's a very similar product, but maybe there's something that's more durable that they can suggest. And then when you're doing the work, having them come out when the work first starts to review the mock-up or review the starting thing and say, yeah, the contractor's installing as per our specification
mhm.
gives some quality assurance on the technical side that the contractor you've hired is doing the job correctly. So highly recommend
Yes.
contacting them. They'll come out for free. They don't even charge you. So
That's important, guys. Free.
It is super
Um,
important, and it's also educational. It's not just somebody. If you're from a contractor's point of view, if I'm standing in front of the strata and say the strata manager and the representative is saying, okay, well, XYZ, this is the problem. It's not like, yes, they're trying to sell the product, but it's not like I'm trying to sell them something. They're seeing it
yeah,
firsthand, and it's very powerful to actually for them to understand from a technical point of view, because a lot of the time they can explain things a lot better. They just know how
yeah,
to, yeah, to deal with that. So I think, in terms from the contractor side, um, I think, when it comes to working with engineering firms, there's always, uh, my standpoint on it is I enjoy working with engineering firms, and there's a liability standpoint where we can follow a scope of work, we can make sure that we're doing exactly what that scope of work is, and
yeah,
that's super important when it comes down to choosing the correct contractor, because you never know, they could just like skip a few steps and they're saving themselves thousands of dollars, and the end product looks identical to what you would do with all of the other steps involved, but the shelf life of that product would
absolutely. It
inevitably
might look
be,
good the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, even the first year or two. But over
yeah.
time, especially if we're talking about a traffic coding that people are driving on, the right preparation, the right product, it'll really manifest itself relatively quickly.
And
Um,
so to my point
yeah,
here, it's just like working alongside engineering firms. It might cost a little bit of money, but you're going to almost be guaranteed the end result. So I think to that, Bryan, it's where you are in your profession today, you see this every day. So, ultimately, I think you can speak to the fact that your purpose is just to ensure that they're getting the right product and they're getting the
Yeah.
right what they're paying for.
Yeah,
So
really quickly, high level. I mean, there's an assessment establishing the scope, what needs to
mhm,
be done,
yeah.
what product is the right product to apply to solve your issue, and then there's some oversight. We're not quality control. I would say an engineer is more quality assurance. So,
Mhm,
doing some reviews during the work, whether that's a handful of reviews for a small project or maybe every couple days for a big, more elaborate project, whether it's
mhm,
our firm or others in town, I would suggest mostly an engineering fees are usually around 10, maybe 15% on the high end of the cost of a project, which is relatively small money to get the job done right. Most reputable contractors actually prefer to work, like you said, you alluded to, you can actually prefer to work with an engineer because they know that they have the engineering expertise backing them up. That yeah, we're doing the right system, and this is the
yeah.
correct way of doing things. A lot of unfortunately, some stratas don't see it that way. They see it's an extra cost, and I was just out last week. We get calls all the time from stratas that did not involve a consultant, hired somebody. Now they're in trouble. Now we got to go back and review the work, what was done, what was specified. It's always more expensive after the fact if things go wrong. So,
Okay, so
Okay.
we're running up against the clock here.
okay.
We have a question that came in. What is the difference between painting and membrane replacement? So, difference between painting and membrane replacement. And that's from Aaron.
Okay, well, really high level, generally painting is on a vertical surface. A coating or membrane would be on a horizontal or waterproofing surface. So if you have a balcony or a deck membrane, whether it's a wood frame deck or concrete, if it's on the floor, it's typically a membrane, whether it's a roofing membrane
Like a
or traffic coating or painting is on the wall.
And typically membrane coatings are more than one coat, and it's not brushed
Correct.
on like paint. It's measured in thickness by wet
Yep.
mills. So
Correct.
it's put on in stages. It's not just one coat. So there's different stages to it.
Yeah, and we've run into situations where owners have painted their deck with porch
Mm,
paint over of urethane membrane, which now you got to basically take the whole thing off and redo it.
yeah,
So that's
we
something to keep
create.
an eye out for. Do not use porch paint on a traffic membrane.
Okay, so now we're into the Q&A session. If anybody has any questions, fire away. And then we got we'll wrap up here in 2, 3 minutes. Again, if there's something you think of afterwards, just shoot us an email and we'll get you an answer. Okay, so we got one question here. I think we already answered it. How long can we leave paint before the substrate? How
How
long
long
can we?
does paint? Sorry, how long does paint
Yeah,
last? Is that the
yeah,
question?
exactly. Yeah,
It really
that's a big question.
a well painted building, I would say on 8 to 10 year cycle. But if it's poorly painted, you might have less than that. Obviously,
If it's
a shelter
indirect sun,
wall. Sorry, go ahead.
so if it's indirect sun as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
we would certainly say every 10 years would be on the high end for most painted services.
Another question we had here is, can you survey a building and outline a plan? I think we answered that earlier by, I guess the answer is yes, but it's always best to have a third party, someone separate from the contractor. Do
so
that, Brian. I guess you want to add on to that.
Sorry, I missed the question. Just cut out there for a
Okay,
second.
basically they're saying, can you survey our building and outline a plan? Like, can you come out and have a look
Oh,
and inspect it? And yeah.
yeah. I mean, we ourselves and other firms, if it's a bigger assessment, we do something called a building envelope condition assessment where we evaluate, your whole systems and windows. If you're talking about just, specifically painting and coatings, generally we'd come and do a smaller review. It really depends on the size of the complex. If it's, 180 units, it's going to be more expensive to review that than a small 20 unit building. But absolutely. Oftentimes we'll do a quick assessment and then establish a spec for you. At that point, sometimes stratas decide to execute and do the work on their own. We'd all recommend that they work with us throughout the project. But for a fairly simple project, we can do an assessment and provide a short form spec that they can use. Maybe a more elaborate project, we'd want to be involved, prefer to be involved right to the end.
Okay, two more questions came in
Yeah.
here. One from Ross. May have been covered, but how important is ambient temperature during application? Ambient temperature during application.
I'd say the temperature and the relative humidity are particularly of particular importance, um, especially for coating replacement on balconies and traffic
Concrete.
horizontal surfaces. Paint, you can get away with painting in a little bit dicier weather, if you will, but obviously the warmer the better.
And that's the next question actually is from Devin. It goes, is painting membrane better in the warmer months? I think we just touched on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So
I mean, if you have to paint outside, like today, I would suggest that you know
yeah.
if you're doing a
would go.
renewal project and you have scaffolding set up and you have it boarded off and you're working off a scaffold and it's the building's enclosed or shrink wrapped and you have some electric heaters, then absolutely you could paint this time of year, but that's an extra cost, right? So
The paint
The
might go a
electric
little farther today because of the watered down.
you dilute it,
diluted.
exactly 2 for 1.
Okay, another question from Lucian here. Good, we're getting lots of questions. Some owners install tiles on top of a membrane on their concrete balconies. How bad is that? So some owners install tiles on top of a membrane on their concrete balconies. How bad is that?
It's not okay. So that this happens a lot. They use plastic tiles, or they might use porcelain tiles because they don't like the look of often the traffic membrane's a gray or a blue. It's pretty standard colors, so they put tiles so it looks nicer. That in and itself isn't going to make the membrane fail. But what happens is some of those tiles stay on for years. Sorry, dirt and debris get trapped underneath it.
Right.
The tiles do affect the drainage, so if that balcony is exposed to a lot of weather, the water might be sitting on the balcony a bit longer. We've had owners. I'm sure Rachel's run into this too, where owners have pets outside that are urinating on the balcony. Now that's getting trapped below the tiles. So I would suggest if you can having an annual review or at least every couple years where someone on the strata, whether it's the property manager or a member of the strata council, is reviewing the condition of the balconies. The balconies are limited common property. They belong to building owners, so they're a responsibility of everybody should be looking at those. But just having tiles in itself, not a deal breaker, but just that membrane needs to be reviewed on regular cycles.
We see quite a bit of this problem on the cleaning side of our business, especially the cleaning where we have decks that are clogged and they're asking us to take these tiles up to clean the drains out. And it's a lot more work, Rachel.
Yeah, it
So,
is quite a
and
bit
then
more work, and
risk of damage and people's stuff on top, and it's a
What a
problem.
lot
it
of
just traps water and
councils
moisture.
do. What a lot of councils do is if you want to have something on top of the balcony surface, whether it's vinyl surface or something, anything that's covering it, you get an owner betterment agreement signed with that particular owner, and any additional cost any additional maintenance cost that arises because of their system would be the owner's responsibility to cover the cost, not the Strata Corporation. And then
Well, it makes
they're
sense.
responsible
Yeah.
for it, right?
That follows the next owner too, as well.
Exactly.
Right?
But what often happens is the Strata doesn't do an annual review, so nobody even knows. The person's on the 30th floor. Nobody checks every
Nobody asks either, right?
right.
So
It's only when the unit changes hands.
yeah.
And then the new owner is like, oh, there's a problem. My deck membrane's in bad condition. Well, the previous owner never said anything for 10 years. So
Yeah. And another thing from Ross, he brings up another question about the deck stuff. He goes, same for AstroTurf for rugs. And I imagine it would actually be worse for AstroTurf.
yeah,
Worse, way worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
if you see see that green golf course matting, that fake grass that people put, I've seen more times than not, that is basically a landing pad because the owner doesn't want to take their little dog out to the street, so they just whittle on this pad. It's gross, but it happens more times than you think.
And it also
Yeah.
traps everything underneath of that mat, and then it ultimately, urine is acidic. It's going to eat away at everything. I've had decks where I've had blisters, and we've popped them, and it's like urine underneath because they've
So I mean that'll obviously compromise the length that membrane's going to last. And typically, again, that owner might move, they pull the rug, take it with them, and now there's a big stained, delaminated area of the membrane. The new owner's phoning the Strata as soon as they move in, going, this balcony's in horrible condition, right? So those things got to be looked at for sure.
Okay, so we're 8 minutes over our time.
Okay.
I think this was I think this was great. I think you guys we had a lot of good comments and people really like this. And We're going to follow up in January with a bit more of a series where we can get a little more in depth on certain areas. It sounds like people would like that, and
Yeah.
we got this is recorded, so we'll put the recording out to you guys afterwards. And if you got any more questions, ask away. And
Yeah,
I
I would
learned some
just add
stuff.
it.
I mean, I
Just
learned a
add at
lot
the
about.
end.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Brian. Yeah.
I would just add at the end. Sorry to cut you off, David. Is just if
Okay.
there's specific questions. Obviously, there's sort of two realms I see with strata maintenance. There's concrete buildings. Most of those are towers, not always, but mostly towers. And then we have wood frame buildings. We have townhouses. We have MER buildings, 6-story wood frame. Those are kind of the two things. So if managers or maintenance people out there have specific questions related to wood frame or versus concrete, I think we could do another one of these where we get into a bit more elaborate questions on concrete repairs or parking garage membrane repairs, and then wood frame is something else. But
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think
okay.
everybody would enjoy that.
Perfect.
So, okay.
Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording and thank everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. And then we'll follow up. So thanks, guys. Talk
Thanks
to you soon.
everybody for